all the time. And this is something that never, ever would have happened 2 years ago.
Geoff, welcome back. How has Carnivore been going for you?
Uh, Thanks, Dave. Good seeing you. Carnivore has been going great for me. Um, you know, I found out a couple things that I'd like to share down the road here that I find truly fascinating on why carnivore works so well for so many people. I also found a couple cool things I'd like to share diet wise, and maybe rehash some of my blood work that I finally got back and had time to kind of really go through, because even my cardiologist doesn't know what to say. So it's been an interesting couple months since we spoke, and I asked to come back on because I felt like I needed to share this with other people who may have some lipid issues going on, or a doctor that's not really grasping what's really going on. So thanks for having me back.
Thank you. So maybe just for people that may not have seen your first video yet, could you give us a little bit of a summary on how you found Carnivore and what happened?
Yeah, so I found Carnivore. I had calcific tendonitis in my shoulder, which is a jelly bean bone deposit right in your tendon where it's not supposed to be. I couldn't use it. I couldn't lift it. Went in, had x-rays, and could see it on there. Got a cortisone shot. Doctor said it will either get better or get worse in 3 or 4 months. 3 or 4 months went by, and during that time I had been searching YouTube for arthritis, calcific tendonitis, home remedies, stuff like that. And about the end of February, my shoulder started getting really sore again, which was almost 4 months after my shot. And this Jordan Peterson video kept coming up, and I finally clicked on it one night, and that was kind of the red pill that took me down the rabbit hole of carnivore. And I watched his video, and then I watched Michaela Peterson's video, and then a bunch of other stuff started coming up. And March 1st of 23, I started carnivore. I jumped right in. I didn't wean myself off anything. Had a 10-day headache, and I made it through that. And in 2 weeks, I could go like this with my shoulder. And it was an amazing thing in that short of amount of time. I went back to my doctor on March 22nd and told him, I said, I don't know if I really need my second cortisone shot. And he kind of looked at me funny and ran me through a bunch of tests. And I passed them all, and he said, no, you're good. I said, great. I hope I don't have to see it for a while. I left, and I haven't seen him since then. So since that time, I have been what I would say 95% carnivore. I do have, I stay with a Dr. Wethman philosophy of 20 carbs or less a day. So there are things I will have, like a yogurt, or I will have a beer sometimes when I'm grilling. I'm in Wisconsin, right? We have a lot of bars in Wisconsin, if anybody doesn't know that. But I will have a beer, but I count that as part of my 20 carbs for the day. So I try to do my best to stay at 20 and sometimes 0, just depending on the day. I'm not on the lion diet as of yet, although I may try that at some point. But overall, the carnivore thing has been going extremely well. Just a quick story. Last weekend, so this is 2 weekends ago now, being Thursday, I had worked a 52-hour week at work, went to bed late on Friday night, got up at 5:30 on Saturday morning, did 10 hours of yard work outside, came in, had a ribeye, and I never got tired. Came in, had a ribeye, so I did OMAD that day. Went to bed at 11:30 Saturday night, got up at 5:30, not by choice, it's just when I wake up now. Did another 10 hours in the yard, pulling buckthorn and doing all kinds of yard work. It's finally like a nice spring weekend here. Never got tired, never ate until dinner. Got up, Monday morning early, did another 50 some hour a week, and then did a repeat last weekend. And even my family is like, can't believe I'm just nonstop energy all the time. And this is something that never, ever would have happened 2 years ago on the standard American diet, because I was insulin resistant. I was actually highly insulin resistant. I was always tired. I had no ambition, no energy to do anything, let alone go outside on no food other than one ribeye steak at night and do 10 hours of yard work. It was truly amazing. I love it. I love how I feel. My shoulder is basically 100%. I haven't had any pain in it for I don't even remember how long. And so, carnivore for me is fantastic, and I have no intention of changing. And when people see some of my blood work and some of my labs, maybe they'll understand why I have no intention of changing. And I know it goes against everything that I've been taught and you've been taught. My primary care physician still says my cholesterol is too high, and I told them flat out, I don't care. And my cardiologist can't understand or wrap his head around why on my NMR sheet, my blood work has gotten so much better than back in 2012 when I was insulin resistant and eating the standard American everything diet. Because I only didn't like 5 foods, Dave. Like Brussels sprouts, raw oysters, sauerkraut, lima beans, and there's probably like one other thing in there, and that's it. Like I ate anything and everything, and I was not scared to try stuff, because sometimes your favorite food, you just got to try it once, right? It's kind of like for me now with sardines. I never had sardines until last summer on the carnivore diet, and now I have them every day, and I absolutely love them. But I always thought they were gross based on what people told me.
Oh, nice.
Weird.
Yeah. So I guess if there was only 5 foods that you didn't like before, probably the all the the boxed category of foods were all in before, right?
All in, and I could literally sit down and eat an entire box of cereal with a half a gallon of milk. And I did that from being a teenager all the way through my 20s, 30s, 40s. Cereal was probably one of my favorite things to eat. And I didn't always eat the bad cereal, but I would eat Grape Nuts Flakes and Special K and Rice Chex and, some of this other stuff. But at the end of the day, it all breaks down to carbs anyway, right? It just wasn't loaded with the 50 million grams of extra sugar. I go to Pizza Hut here in the United States. I'd easily down a half a pan pizza, 3 pieces of garlic bread, and 2 Cokes, and not think about it, right? So knowing what I know now, it's a no-brainer why I was highly insulin resistant, and it had been for years. Now, granted, 20, 30 years ago, that wasn't really talked about. Right, Dr. Ben Bickman has done a good job, along with all these other metabolic doctors, of trying to get the word out through YouTube of what is really the root cause of so many of the diseases and issues that people are going through. He has a wonderful book I showed you last time that people should read. Go to his Insulin IQ website on YouTube. He's got a ton of great videos, and he's very technical, but explains it in a way that the average person can understand what it's doing to you and to your cells, and why it manifests different in me versus somebody else. But it is truly the biggest underlying root cause of everything going on, and nobody, for the most part, knows about it.
So before we started, you mentioned that you'd had an aha moment recently.
Absolutely. So I continue to educate myself and watch videos, a lot of them on your channel, because I just love hearing different people's testimonies from different parts of the world, tell their story and what they cured. I'm still blown away by the MS people curing their MS. It's just, I can't even believe that, but it's happening, and it's happening a lot, it seems. And that's just totally awesome stuff. So I was watching this video on a different YouTube channel, and it was Dr. Zoe Harcum. She's from the UK and Wales, and she's like a nutritionist doctor. And I don't know her full background, but I was watching this video, and the first minute of the video was very catching. And the aha moment in that first 10 minutes of this video that she did is, Dave, if I asked you how many grams of sugar are dissolved in your blood at any given moment, or your homeostasis level of your blood, what do you think that number would be?
Honestly, not sure. Yeah.
I wasn't sure either, right? And I have a physical education degree. I went to college for that. I've had anatomy, physiology, biomechanics, all the bi-ed stuff. But I had no idea either until this video. And when she explained this, it was my carnivore aha moment. It was like, no wonder carnivore works so well for so many people. And I could picture it and completely understand why I was insulin resistant, why I had my calcific tendonitis, and the brain fog and the lack of energy and all that. So if I was to tell you, Dave, that in your body at any given moment, you have about 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of glucose, or 1 little itty bitty teaspoon dissolved in your blood at any given time, and that's where your body wants to be, that's your homeostasis level, okay? And so when you go out and eat and you have 1 Coke, let's just say 1 Coke, you're thirsty, you have a can of Coke, there's 36 grams of carbs in there. But your body wants to be at 4. But you just put 36 grams in. And now your insulin has to hurry up and rush out and take all that sugar out of your blood because it wants to be sitting at 4. That's its comfort level. Well, guess what? It can only do 2 things with that. So the insulin's going to take it out, and it either has to push it into your muscle, which if you're sitting around all day working, like here we're sitting, right, and people go to sit work and they're on the computer all day, or they're laying in bed all day or whatever, the muscle's full. So the only other place it can push it is into fat cells. And that's not me, that's Dr. Bickman, that's Dr. Zoe Harcum, that's all these other metabolic doctors, Dr. Barkay, right? Talking about how that process works. But, so for fun, I'm like, oh my God, this is like amazing stuff. Like, holy crap, right? So I'm watching and I pause and I go for fun and I go to the McDonald's nutrition website. I Google it up and I go to it. And I just started plugging in food, and I plugged in a Big Mac, a large fry, and a large Coke. And I wanted to see what the website said of how many grams of carbs were in that meal. You won't even believe it. About 188 grams of carbs in a Big Mac, large fry, and a large Coke. So how many times did I do that to my blood work and my blood system over and over and over and over and over? And I didn't eat McDonald's a lot, but I ate it enough, or I ate Culver's, or I ate Pizza Hut, or I ate whatever, my bowls and bowls and bowls of cereal with skim milk because, fat was bad and all that stuff. But I was dumping hundreds of grams of sugar or carbs into my system almost every meal. So I had my body, or my cells had no option but to become insulin resistant. So when that light bulb went on, and she really explains it, you should really have her on. She really explains it in a way that is very easy to understand and also very eye-opening. Because as a carnivore, I'm saying, okay, I want less than 20 grams a day. You know, well, okay, so when you do that, guess what? Now my blood can stay in homeostasis almost all day, which is why I don't spike and then I don't crash. I'm just flatline, you know, pedal to the metal red line all day long until 10, 11 o'clock, and then I pass out and I sleep like a rock, and I'm up at 5:30 ready to go. And I can't wrap my head around that, but that's my everyday, right? But because I'm not putting in 188 grams of carbs in one meal, I don't even know what the math is on that, but it's many, 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 many times more than my body wants, right? I'm not doing that. So guess what? I'm just flatline energy, and it's amazing. But it's also very easy to see why, as a population, you know, we're 80 to 90% metabolically unhealthy, and we're, what is it, 50% overweight or whatever crazy number it is, even if you're 20 pounds overweight, right? It's a slow add. They didn't just all happen in one night, but every trip to McDonald's or every pizza or every whatever super loaded carb food you have, your body only has two options with that amount of carbs at one time. Put it in your muscle cell or put it into fat storage. It can't do anything else with it. So unless you're an athlete, you know, an NBA basketball player, or, you know, running and playing 4 games of soccer a day or something like that, where you can eat the carb and it goes right in your muscle and you burn it right away, the only place it's going is fat storage. So it was my carnivore aha moment, and it just all came around and made sense of why every single one of your guests, when they come on this show, have a very similar result, because it's fine. They're finally letting their body heal the way that it wants to, which is to be in homeostasis at 4 grams. And if for whatever reason your blood sugar dips too low, your liver is going to make it out of gluconeogenesis and get it right back to that level, because that's really the only level it wants to be. And so I hope people can really try to grasp and understand how little 4 grams of carbs is in an entire person's blood. Now, if you're 250 pounds, maybe you got 6 grams of carbs, but we're not talking 188 grams of carbs like in a Big Mac meal at McDonald's.
This is awesome to know this kind of thing, right? And you can kind of understand why we've got to where we are. But it's so scary to think how long we've been abusing our bodies. And you know, the thing is, once our insulin's elevated, our immune system stops working. So then we become more susceptible to all these other things and all these other problems. And, you know, your body not being in this homeostatic level means that, you know, it can't do the repair it needs to do. And it's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, it's this big vicious cycle. And the unfortunate part for me until recently, and the unfortunate part for so many people, is they don't know they don't know. And if you don't know you don't know, you can't fix it. Because if you know it and then you choose not to fix it, well, then that's your choice. And then you have to deal with those consequences of that choice. But if you know that your blood is only really wanting 4 grams of sugar at any given time, why would you dump in 188 grams of sugar? Like, that doesn't make common sense. It doesn't make sense. But if you're a carnivore and you're eating high fat and steak and, you know, protein, it makes perfect sense. And it makes perfect sense why my body went, thank you, Jeffrey. Thank you for, you know, giving me a break and giving my pancreas a break and giving my cells a chance to recover. You know, I went from, you know, in 2012, I had my first NMR done, and my LPIR score was a 66. Now, if you Google that and you look up a lipid NMR chart, that is a highly insulin resistant score back in 2012, and my doctor didn't know it. I didn't know it. My doctor didn't know it. All he wanted to do was put me on a statin because my LDL was too high. And it was only, I want to say, 124 back then. I'm way higher than that being a lean mass hyperreactor now. But he was on a statin, didn't know anything about insulin resistance, still really doesn't. But how many years prior to that was I insulin resistant? Probably 20 years before that, and that was in 12th, I was 42, probably back all the way into college years, and just, so as I learned all this insulin stuff, one of my daughters, who was 15 at the time, was starting to gain some weight and very lethargic and just a carbaholic. And I had to fight with her doctor to order a fasting insulin test for her at 15. She didn't want to do it. Finally, I got her to do it. I said, here, you can do it, or I'm going to go to a different lab. Right? And come to find out, her fasting insulin was a 15. Well, 5 is insulin sensitive, and according to Dr. Bickman or Dr. Hyman, anything over 10, you are insulin resistant. So at 15 years old, my daughter was insulin resistant. Now, luckily, we've corrected a bunch of that, knowing that, and she's probably no longer insulin resistant. She's lost a bunch of weight. She feels better. He has a lot of steak with me. He makes a killer Alfredo sauce from scratch, which is Parmesan cheese, heavy cream, and butter. And we use that as like a steak sauce. I'm just getting extra fat, and it's fantastic. But if you're already insulin resistant at 15, you don't know it. Well, how insulin resistant are you at 25 or 35 or 45? Right? I probably was insulin resistant in my teens because all I did was eat carbs. Because back in the late 80s, that's what we were told. Eat carbs, eat carbs, eat carbs. I mean, God, I played football and basketball and baseball. I was like a year-round athlete for 4 years in high school. But I remember having these giant pasta dinners before the games, right? And I'd have pizza, and I'd have boxes of cereal, and I'd have a gallon of milk every day, and just all this stuff. And I'm sure going back, I was insulin resistant. I'm just sure of it, right? But now, in basically 9 months, I had an insulin test done back at the end of December of 23, and I was a 5. So I had gone from super insulin resistant to insulin sensitive in 9 months. That's how fast I corrected it. So I'm extremely happy about that for many reasons. Because of the inflammation and because of the other things that the inflammation is causing, as far as my arthritis and my shoulder, probably I do have a CAC score of a 121. It's probably a combination of, being on a statin for about 8 years and being insulin resistant while being on a statin. Probably started that because it's a very low score. It's there, but it's low. But knowing now what I know, and knowing I've flipped into what is called a lean mass hyperreactor state, where my cholesterol is really, really high, my VLDL is really, really high, but my triglycerides are crazy low. My HDL is crazy high, and all my other markers have moved in this NMR chart to the good side, that my doctor couldn't even explain it. My cardiologist, I brought the chart in, I charted them out, and this is the chart I sent you, and he couldn't explain how eating, nothing but fat, steak, bacon, eggs, butter, and cheese, for the most part, made my blood work go like this to the good side. He couldn't explain that. Take the LDL out of it, because the LDL is going up because I'm in the lean mass hyperreactor part of that, because I'm fat adapted. So I am burning fat and my body needs to make more cholesterol to transport the fat to my cells because that's my energy source, right? But um, my high sensitivity CRP, which measures inflammation, is a 0.23. It's like non-existent. So my sensitivity is gone, or my inflammation is gone. My insulin resistance is gone, or as Dr. Barkay would say, my hyperinsulinemia is gone, right? And all of my blood work, for the most part, except for my LDL and my VLDL, has gotten way, 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 way better. So I've gone from a small pattern A to a large, or a small pattern B to a large pattern A blood type, which has very increasingly lowered my cardiovascular disease risk. And I'm super excited about that. Even though my cardiologist can't explain it to me, I know I'm going in the right direction because the chart says so. It's not me. It's not my opinion. It's just fact. And when you look at my chart, you can see it. Almost everything goes to the green except my LDL and my VLDL and my total count, which, if you understand the lean mass hyperreactor studies going on right now, it makes perfect sense that those three are high and everything else is getting better.
Oh. So just on that, can we go through some of your results?
Yeah, absolutely. One other thing too, Dave, that I did is back in 2016, I had a carotid ultrasound. My doctor was concerned that I was getting plaque buildup in my carotid arteries. So I went back in March of this year, March 6th to be exact, and had another one done because I just wanted to compare. I had one in 2016. I said, okay, well, let's see. I've been eating now this way for a year. Let's see if it's gotten any worse, right? And at the very bottom of this, I highlighted, but it says compared to the prior study of 11/22 of 16, there are no significant changes seen. So I do have a little bit of plaque in the right carotid. I had that back in 16, but they saw no difference in that. So in other words, my carnivore diet has not plugged up my right carotid artery. Nothing has changed there. So I'm happy about that, right? That's a good thing. Again, my fasting insulin, for people that want to try and do a 30-day challenge or say, I'm going to do this, I really recommend you go get a fasting insulin test done beforehand. I wish I would have. It's my biggest regret of not knowing that, because I would be very curious to see where mine was sitting. But in August, I had already gotten down to a 7, and on January 5th of 24, I was a 5, which I was really excited about that, because that means I was back to insulin sensitive, which was one of my main goals once I learned about this the whole time. And that second test I had to fight with my doctor to get. So just don't take no for an answer. My high sensitivity CRP, I had one done way back in 2016 when I had the carotid stuff done. I was a 0.8, so not terrible, but not great. I had one done in August of 23, and that was a 0.23. So again, almost zero inflammation, which is why my arthritis went away, why I feel so much better. My shoulder got better, all of that. Now, I know in the last video, I remember someone had put a comment in there because I said that A1C didn't matter. And I know that it does, okay? But insulin resistance is a precursor to having a high A1C. So my whole point with that was that you need to figure out that your insulin levels are good or too high, and that can happen. Meaning you can have a high insulin or be insulin resistant for decades before the hemoglobin A1C is going to start to creep up and become pre-diabetic or diabetic. Again, that's not me, that's Dr. Bickman. Go watch his videos. He talks about that a lot. But my hemoglobin A1C was a 5.2, which of course in all of my years, I've never been diagnosed as pre-diabetic, diabetic, or even had a higher A1C. but I was insulin resistant. I also had some other things checked for my heart and cardiovascular disease that I learned in a Dr. Mark Hyman video. So I did get my fibrinogen checked. That came in at a 201, which is on the very low end of normal. So my doctor said that was good. I also had my homocysteine checked, and that was also really good and really low at an 8.3. So those are two other levels just from within the cardiovascular world that are good, even though my LDL is high, right? I was checking everything else. I also had my ApoB checked. That was a 119. That is also something, going through all the research, that would be elevated being a lean mass hyperreactor. It kind of goes along with the LDL. It's according to my chart, I'm on the higher end. I'm not super high, but I'm medium high on that. I also had my LP little a checked because I've heard a lot of talk about that with a lot of the cardiologists. And that was very good news. You can see there, my doctor said your lipo A level was normal. This is good news in terms of risk stratification. However, he does put his CYA in there. Your risk is still elevated because my LDL is too high. And I'm going, yeah, okay, you haven't read the papers I gave you. That's just how I'm looking at that, right? But being a 6, that's a very, very low good number. And then the next one over is just something, that I wanted to show people, because for my entire life, I would go in and have my standard lipid panel, and my doctor at the time, wherever it was, would say, your HDL is too low. And I would say, well, I don't know what to do about that, right? So in this chart, I put it up here because I was always in the low 40s, and sometimes I was in the 30s. Like when I was in my 20s, I was in the 30s for HDL. And then you can see there's some yellow dots there. That's when I started taking fish oil pretty regularly to try to bring that number up. And you can see that it did bring it up. But then all of a sudden, I go on this crazy carnivore diet and my HDL shoots up to an 80. Like, where did that come from? Well, that's because being a lean mass hyperreactor, that's a byproduct of that. My LDL goes up and then your HDL goes up, which is good. And, when you look at the next chart over, well, my triglycerides were 80. So my HDL was an 82, but my triglycerides were an 80. So, my HDL to triglyceride ratio is a 0.97. Well, everything I've been watching, they want you under 1.5. So obviously that's a really good number to be. And I've had some other blood work done since this one, Dave, and my triglycerides were a 69, lowest I've ever had my entire life, right? And it's like, when you just look at how I've changed in the year and 2.5 months of being carnivore, insulin resistant to insulin sensitive and a lean mass hyperreactor. My HDL to triglyceride ratio is a 0.97. Had my highest HDL ever in my life of 54 years without trying. It just happened, right? My lowest cholesterol HDL ratio ever. And I've gone from a small pattern B to a large pattern A, all in 14 months. It's just remarkable how fast your blood work and your body can change if you give it the opportunity to do that. It's just going back to where it wants to go. I'm just not putting crap in the way of that, right?
It's crazy because it's like it's just the same as anything else. Your car's not running very well because you're putting sand into the gas tank. You stop putting sand in there and you put actual gas into the gas tank, and then all of a sudden the car's going okay now, right?
Yeah. And it's part of why I feel so good, because my body's not fighting the shit I'm putting in it day after day after day after day for 30, 40, 50 years, right? I'm finally just letting it do its thing on a proper human diet, and that's Dr. Ken Berry and, the healing humanity and all of that, but it's all true. It's all true, even though I can't still wrap my head around some of it. The results are what they are, right? You have all these thousands and thousands and thousands of people with their anecdotal stories, right? But eventually that becomes a study. It's just not one that's going to be published in a medical journal. But at the end of the day, it's a real study by real people having real results and living really good, healthy lives, right? So, for an example, if I go into Lambeau Field up in Green Bay and I'm down on the third row of the end zone, which is where my tickets are, and I start screaming as loud as I can, nobody's going to hear me. Especially if you're out in the parking lot, you're not going to hear me. I'm just a guy screaming, right? But you put 76,000 of us in there and we all start screaming and you can hear it 4 blocks away, right? So this carnivore community that we're in and these videos and these doctors doing these videos and these testimonials are us in Lambeau Field shouting at the top of our lungs for people to hear us. And we only do it because we want them to feel what we feel. It has nothing to do with, being right or them being wrong. It just has to do with us wanting the people that we care about to feel as good as we do. And I get emotional talking about that, but it's true. It's the reason why I decided to be a voice in this community, because I don't want to be the one guy in Lambeau Field yelling and nobody else is. Your channel is something really special, Dave. It really is. And, my hat's off to you and, Carrie from Homestead How and all the doctors in the space that we watch, because they're the ones that have started this. And we're getting this momentum where it's starting to really make a big impact. So in my last video with you a couple months ago, remember I had said I only had 2 people that kind of started, and they both kind of fell off. Well, I'm happy to say that those 2 people have restarted. They're going to be 30 days. Let's see, one was 30 days today. He's down 15 pounds. He can't even believe how much energy he has. He feels better. You can see it in his face and stuff like that. And he can't even believe he waited so long. Right. And as I start to count the different people in my life that watched my first video and then took the challenge, I'm up to like 12 or 13 people that are right around their 30 days. And that makes me feel good. And not one person has come up to me and, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. Right. They all made it through the 2 weeks of adjustment period. And now they're like, God, I feel so good. I see why you like doing this. And God, I went and I go into work and they just tell me about it. And I'm excited about that, right? I'm excited for them. And I hope they can stay with it, because if they can get to 14 months like I am, it's an amazing ride. It is an amazing ride.
First, congratulations on the results to date. It's great to hear that things are going in the right direction from the last time we spoke. Where can people find you? Can you talk about your YouTube channel and what kind of videos have you got coming up?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is right underneath me here. It's at KM Carnivore. I have 3 videos out so far and a couple goofy turkey videos from my backyard. I do have a video that will be dropping very shortly on kind of some of my blood work in a little more detail, and some other video or some other slides we didn't go over here. And I am going to work on a video regarding the 4 grams of sugar, because people really need to see that. They need to get that aha moment, because it really is I'm going to make it very visual so people can really understand what's going on when they have a meal full of carbs and what their body's doing. It's going to take me some time to do that, because I'm not super good on the YouTube editing part. That's my daughter, and she's extremely busy. But I am going to do that because to me, that is the biggest aha moment I've had in all of the stuff I've watched. And I've watched 500 plus videos, Dave. I mean, it's crazy. I watch them every day. I listen to them going in and out of work because I just want to learn something new and something different. And that one was my biggest aha moment. So I'm definitely going to follow up with that. And there'll be more stuff coming. As we go, I'm going to start doing some more cooking videos. I'm going to do a what I eat in a day video, stuff like that people really want to see. Like I said before, I'm kind of a dirty carnivore, meaning I like a lot of seasoning on my steaks. I know some people do just salt. I'm not that guy. I'm just not. But it's 14 and a half, almost 15 months, and I still crave a steak. I have 2 New York strips sitting on the counter right now, ready to go on the grill when we're done. And I'm looking forward to that. So with that, one other thing I didn't mention and I forgot that's new since the last time is I remember talking with or listening to one of your live chats with, I think his name was Ted, and he talked about smoked salt. So I found Redmond's Real Smoked Salt on Amazon, and that is a game changer. If you want really, really, really flavorful steak with no extra seasoning and no other whatever on it, find some Redmond's Real Salt that's been smoked. It is truly amazing stuff. To the point I do that about half the time now, and I just do the salt. But it's amazing stuff.
Nice. Yeah, I'll have to try that one out myself. I can probably get it in Japan because I've been able to get some of the other ones in Japan on Amazon. So, oh, nice.
It's truly amazing, Dave. It's so flavorful, and it's just salt. And that's, for someone who's doing like a lion or wants to go really, really eliminate a bunch of stuff, it's really the way to go.
Geoff, thank you so much for coming on, giving us an update. I'm really happy to hear that you're doing better than the last time, even though last time you were doing so well. So thank you so much for taking the time to come on.
My pleasure, Dave. And keep up the good work. Keep doing your interviews. You are making just a huge difference in this community for so many different people. I refer people to your website. I'm sending links out all the time. I watch the next testimony and I just send stuff out to people because, it's real people. They're not doctors. They're just some people around the world telling their amazing story of what they cured. And that stuff just needs to keep being said, So thank you for that.